It's just part of it. You know, there's entertainers and there's competitors, and I totally understand that. My job is to compete.
That the NFL told other, don't draft him. Do not draft him. We're gonna make an example out of him.
From a fifth-round slide to being hyped as the Browns' new franchise savior, Shedeur Sanders has the entire NFL buzzing like never before. It doesn't matter if it's Dillon Gabriel throwing shady comments his way, Micah Parsons nitpicking his ball-handling habits, or even NFL legend Eric Dickerson dropping wild collusion conspiracy theories. Coach Prime's son is in the crossfire of every headline, and trust me, the drama started fast. One of the most talked about preseason controversies of 2025 blew up when rookie quarterback Dillon Gabriel seemed to take a slick shot at Sanders during a halftime interview with NFL Network. On August 16, 2025, Gabriel was asked about staying focused through Cleveland's chaotic four-way quarterback competition. His response, cold enough to freeze the room. The internet instantly lit up, with fans convinced Gabriel was clowning Sanders, whose flashy style, famous last name, and celebrity swagger already made him a target for jealousy. Within minutes, social media was on fire. Posts accused Gabriel of being disrespectful, divisive, even plotting to shake Sanders' confidence before he ever touched the field. Some fans straight up called it a calculated hit job to try and bury Shedeur before he had a chance to shine. But here's the twist. Gabriel tried to walk it back later that night in a press conference, swearing he wasn't talking about his quarterback room at all. According to him, his words were aimed at the media, not Sanders.
First off, I'm all about our team, you know what I mean, and each other. I would never make that, and I've said it before, that's why it's interesting. You know, all you in this room are entertainers, and you have a job to do, and I respect it, right? And I'm a competitor, so I have a job to do as well.
But by then, too late, the clip had already gone viral and the narrative had a life of its own. Sanders himself later revealed that Gabriel pulled him aside behind closed doors to clear the air. Shedeur admitted Gabriel told him face-to-face that he meant no disrespect. Still, the damage was done, and the whole mess perfectly exposed just how closely every single move Sanders makes is magnified, twisted, and turned into controversy gold. And just when it looked like all the noise was aimed against him, one unlikely ally stepped up in Sanders' corner and made headlines of his own. Cornerback Tony Brown, a hard-hitting Cleveland vet, became the breakout star of Shedeur's viral NFL debut entrance. In an interview on August 14, 2025, Brown explained why he went so hard backing Sanders, and it wasn't about clout. Brown said he felt a spiritual pull to mentor Shedeur, opening up about how much respect he's always had for Deion Sanders and how that legacy inspired him to ride for Coach Prime's son without hesitation. In a city starving for a hero, Tony Brown's show of loyalty gave fans a glimpse of something bigger, that maybe Sanders' journey is about more than just football. It's about living up to a dynasty that everyone's watching under a microscope. The veteran defensive back said he felt an instant bond with Sanders from the very first handshake, telling him straight up that it was more than just football between them. But it was Tony Brown's wild explanation of their now legendary pregame entrance that really made headlines, because he didn't just show up. He carried a bamboo staff in a box while blasting Shedeur's unreleased rap tracks through a massive speaker like it was a stadium concert. To Brown, that entrance wasn't just showboating, it was spiritual. It's just a calling for me. I believe God puts me in a place to help young men like Shedeur, to guide them, he explained, framing his loyalty as something way bigger than the game. And that energy seemed to work, because Sanders lit it up in his debut against the Carolina Panthers, completing 14 of 23 passes for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. The numbers were solid, but the real shocker, 10.2 million viewers tuned in, making it the most watched NFL Network preseason game in a whole decade. But while Brown and others were praising him, one Hall of Fame legend took things to a whole other level. Eric Dickerson, the Rams icon, dropped a conspiracy so wild it shook the league to its core.
And I'll tell you this much here, what I heard from someone that's in the NFL, that the NFL told other, don't draft him. Do not draft him. We're gonna make an example out of him.
On August 21st, 2025, during his appearance on the Robin and Rodney Show on AM 570 LA Sports, Dickerson claimed the NFL itself tried to blackball Shedeur Sanders from the draft. Wait a second, did he just accuse the league of staging a takedown against Coach Prime's son? According to Dickerson, his very good source told him the NFL's plan was to make sure Sanders went undrafted just to teach him and Deion a lesson in humility. But here's the kicker. Dickerson claimed that an unnamed intervention forced Cleveland to draft him at pick 144, stopping the league's plan dead in its tracks. Whether you buy that story or not, it turned Sanders' draft day slide from a top 10 projection to a 5th-round pick into one of the most dramatic sagas in years, costing him millions in guaranteed money and sparking nonstop debate. But not everybody was buying into the sympathy. Dallas Cowboys superstar Micah Parsons decided to step in, and he wasn't holding back. On April 5th, 2025, Parsons took to social media to teach quarterback fundamentals, but his example just happened to be Shedeur Sanders. His gripe: Sanders' habit of patting the football before throwing. Parsons warned fans that tiny move could be the difference between a clean pass or a sack in the NFL, and Shedeur's defenders went absolutely crazy over it. Micah Parsons doubled down hard, speaking from his perspective as one of the NFL's most feared pass rushers. When Giants wide receiver Darius Slayton jumped in to defend Sanders, arguing that Shedeur's little ball pat looked no different than Tom Brady's mechanics, Parsons snapped back instantly. Comparing the greatest quarterback ever to Sanders is why I'll never entertain a football conversation with you. Like, what are we doing here? He clapped back, turning Twitter into a battlefield. That exchange set off a firestorm, and things went nuclear when Deion Sanders himself joined the chaos. Coach Prime dropped into the thread with a sharp reminder: can we all get along? And it's Sanders with a capital S. We earned that. The message was clear: don't disrespect the family name. And when Shedeur's brutal draft slide finally became reality, Parsons tried to calm the noise by pointing to history. He compared it to Lamar Jackson's shocking tumble to pick 32 in 2018. Lamar Jackson, arguably one of the greatest QBs in college football history, fell to pick 32. Why is everyone in an uproar about Shedeur? Parsons posted, suggesting draft day disrespect wasn't exactly new, but not everyone was tossing out comparisons and film breakdowns. One former Pro Bowl quarterback gave fans something juicier to chew on. Derek Carr, now in his analyst bag, lit up social media with criticism that had Browns fans second-guessing their own coaching staff. On August 23, 2025, during Cleveland's preseason finale against the Los Angeles Rams, Carr was locked in as Shedeur Sanders sat on the bench with just over 2 minutes left. Cleveland trailing 17-16. Everyone expected Sanders to lead a clutch 2-minute drill, but instead, the Browns put in Tyler Huntley. Carr didn't waste a second blasting the decision online. I need to understand why we don't get to see Shedeur Sanders run this 2-minute drill. Wouldn't you want to see your young quarterback operate in this situation? The frustration poured out in real time, and fans were eating it up. Sure, Sanders had struggled, just 3 of 6 passing for 14 yards while eating 5 sacks, but Carr wasn't focused on stats. He hit the bigger picture, firing back at critics. I can understand that, but this could be his last real reps all season. Don't you want to see what he can do under pressure? To Carr, the Browns weren't just protecting Sanders, they were robbing him of the exact moment that could shape his career. While Derek Carr was questioning the Browns' coaching choices, another star was making headlines with his own Sanders-related firestorm. Giants wideout Malik Neighbors stepped up with one of the most passionate defenses of Shedeur Sanders the league has heard, and he wasn't pulling any punches. In a February 2025 sit-down with Sirius XM NFL Radio, Neighbors made his admiration crystal clear. I've been watching him a long time. He's got crazy arm talent. He gives his guys the chance to go make plays. He's not scared. He wants to win, and he's a leader, Neighbors said with conviction. But it was after Sanders' shocking draft slide that Neighbors truly unleashed his fury. On the 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast with Carmelo Anthony in May 2025, Neighbors went scorched earth on the entire league. You don't do something like that to somebody like that. You can't knock his talent. I heard all that talk about him taking unnecessary sacks. He had a bad O-line. He threw 70% with a bad O-line. Neighbors clapped back, torching critics and daring anyone to question Sanders' college production behind Colorado's broken protection. And he didn't stop there. Neighbors launched into a cultural critique that had social media spinning. We gotta stop mixing feelings with how people play linger. Yeah, he might say some things on camera, but that don't change his football. How he carries himself is how his dad raised him. The message was raw. Neighbors believed Sanders was being punished for his authenticity, not his game. Fans ate it up, calling his emotional defense proof that the NFL was mishandling a generational talent. Meanwhile, another quarterback from that same draft class offered a different kind of perspective. Cam Ward, the Dolphins' number 1 overall pick in 2025, had built a friendship with Sanders during months of pre-draft workouts, and he wasn't here for the media's attempt to stir fake rivalries. During Super Bowl week, February 2025, Ward made it plain. It's cool that we're close, because if we weren't, the media would try to pin us against each other. We've been working out together, pushing each other. I'm not trying to compete against him. It's about us both getting better. His words showed genuine respect between the two young stars. And when Sanders' shocking fall actually happened, Ward didn't hesitate.
I have the highest level of respect for what his father's done with his children and for what his father brought to the NFL, to the game of football since the first day I met him. Like I told him, hey, I want to be the guy that you can go to whenever, with anything, bro.
At his introductory Titans press conference on April 25th, 2025, he told reporters flat out, it is surprising because he's a good quarterback. He doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves, especially for the plays he made at Colorado. Cam Ward admitted, his disappointment cutting through every word. The Dolphins rookie revealed just how deep his pre-draft bond with Sanders ran. We thought me and him were going 1 and 2. He was one of the better QBs in the draft, Ward confessed, making it clear that Sanders' fall wasn't just shocking, it was personal. Even months later, after both quarterbacks had landed in their NFL homes, Ward never wavered. In an August 2025 interview, he doubled down. I don't have a rivalry with him, that's my boy. He's been productive wherever he's been, and every time he gets his chance, I know he's gonna make the most of it. Ward's loyalty showed just how real their friendship was. Two young quarterbacks carrying the weight of expectations while rooting for each other instead of tearing each other down. But if Ward was the quiet supporter, one former All-Pro took things to a whole different level. Richard Sherman, the outspoken Seattle Seahawks legend, became Sanders' loudest voice in the media, and he wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers doing it. When Sanders' draft slide turned into a humiliating freefall, Sherman unloaded on his podcast in real time. It's crazy to me that Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. His tape at Colorado was phenomenal. He's got the arm, the poise, the decision-making. I don't get why teams are passing on him. Sherman raged, his frustration climbing as the picks rolled by and Sanders kept slipping. And after Sanders finally stepped on the field for his preseason debut, Sherman's defense got even sharper. Shedeur's stat line, 14 of 23 passes for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns against Carolina, wasn't just good, it was the spark Sherman needed to torch the haters. Hopping on social media, he tweeted, "Wow at Shedeur Sanders. What a throw, dime," highlighting specific passes that had caught his trained defensive eye. But Sherman wasn't content with compliments. He went deeper, blasting the treatment Sanders was facing head on. "I got a lot of respect for number 12. The guy's balling. I don't understand the weird hate he gets. It's like they don't want him to succeed." His words didn't just defend Sanders, they challenged the entire narrative surrounding him. Sherman even turned the spotlight on other rookies, arguing the double standard was obvious. He claimed that if the Giants' first-rounder Jackson Dart had put up the same number Sanders did, the reaction would have been completely different. And when Sanders stumbled in his preseason finale against the Rams, Sherman didn't sugarcoat it, but he made sure to keep it real. Shedeur had a rough one against the Rams, no doubt. 5 sacks. That's not all on him. The O-line was a mess, but he's got to learn to get rid of the ball faster. That's coachable, Sherman explained, breaking it down with the precision of a man who studied quarterbacks for years. His words carried weight, but he wasn't the only ex-player dissecting Sanders' every move. Enter Dan Orlovsky, ESPN analyst and former NFL quarterback who came through with some of the most detailed and surprisingly balanced analysis of Sanders' game. Orlovsky didn't just throw out hot takes, he pulled up the film receipts and gave Sanders a fair shake when most weren't. Back in March 2025, when Sanders was still projected as a top 5 pick, Orlovsky jumped on camera to defend him from the early wave of critics. The tape doesn't lie. Those who think Shedeur Sanders can't play are nuts, he snapped, rolling clips from Colorado's matchup against Baylor, where Sanders threw for 341 yards behind a pocket that was collapsing on nearly every snap. Orlovsky pointed out that most of the mistakes people pinned on Sanders were really the fault of a weak offensive line and sloppy receiver routes, not bad quarterbacking. And when draft night turned into a nightmare, Orlovsky once again tried to calm the storm. "Can we stop having the funeral for Shedeur right now? Can we stop?" he urged on air. "He didn't go in the first round, fine. He could still go top 5 tomorrow, and honestly, it might be a better fit for him." To Orlovsky, Sanders wasn't a bust. He was a victim of narrative, and patience would prove it. Before Sanders even stepped onto the field, Dan Orlovsky wasn't having the doom and gloom chatter. He pushed back hard against the set-up to fail narrative, snapping on air. Will everybody stop with the Shedeur Sanders being set up to fail talk? Who do you want to start the game? He asked, laying out the facts that Sanders got the nod simply because the Browns were banged up at quarterback. Then came Sanders' eye-popping debut, and Orlovsky flipped into full praise mode. On the Pat McAfee show, he gushed, Shedeur Sanders looked comfortable in and out of the huddle. He was aggressive with the football. He played with confidence. The operation was clean. The decision-making was spot on for a moment. It felt like Sanders had silenced all the doubters. But when Sanders hit a wall against the Rams, Orlovsky got surgical again. He highlighted lingering flaws, like the same hesitation issues that showed up at Colorado, showing why his analysis stood out as both honest and balanced. That calm approach clashed directly with a much spicier voice in the media. Emmanuel Acho, the former NFL linebacker turned broadcaster, became a roller coaster of hot takes when it came to Sanders, bouncing from defender to critic and back again as the 2025 season unfolded. Early in the pre-draft process, Acho planted his flag as one of Sanders' strongest allies. When anonymous reports leaked about teams labeling Sanders arrogant and brash during combine interviews, Acho fired back live on FS1's The Facility. I think Shedeur Sanders' security makes a lot of people insecure. So when he comes off confident, when he comes off secure, when he knows who he is, your insecurity dictates his security as a problem, Acho clapped back, flipping the script. To him, Sanders' swagger wasn't a red flag, it was a weapon. Acho even drew direct parallels to Deion Sanders' own bold, unforgettable draft process in 1989, pointing out that the apple didn't just fall close to the tree, it landed right at Prime's feet. But as draft night crept closer, Emmanuel Acho's support suddenly wavered. He flipped the script, raising doubts about Sanders' physical tools. Shedeur Sanders' arm, I got questions about the strength. Travis Hunter would have people beat, and he's waiting for it, Acho warned in April, questioning Shadow's deep ball timing and velocity. And when Sanders shockingly slipped to the 5th round, Acho's emotions boiled over live on air. Shedeur Sanders not getting drafted in the first 3 rounds, it's disgusting, he declared, blasting the league for tanking Sanders' opportunities. He even floated the idea that Sanders should have gone back to college instead of taking a backup role in Cleveland. But the second Sanders shined in his preseason debut, Acho was backpedaling again. He jumped on social media like nothing happened, writing, "If anybody doubts that Shedeur Sanders' game will translate to the NFL, just show them this and shush them up." Fans couldn't ignore the flip-flop. 1 minute Acho was questioning him, the next he was hyping him up like a proud uncle. While Acho's takes bounced all over the place, another former NFL star stood tall with consistent, unwavering support. 2-time Super Bowl champ LeSean McCoy. From the very beginning, McCoy refused to let the critics tear Sanders down. "You have a kid who's been successful everywhere he's been, and now you're nitpicking because he's confident. That's exactly what you want in a quarterback," McCoy argued on air, teaming up with James Jones to call out jealous coaches and scouts. When Sanders impressed during the Browns rookie minicamp in May 2025, McCoy even claimed he had inside sources giving him the scoop. "I got my sources, and they told me he looks like the best player out of the whole camp, and he's a 5th rounder." The implication was clear. Shedeur wasn't just keeping up, he was outshining the competition, and McCoy wasn't shy about making bold predictions either. If you look at Shedeur Sanders, his mindset ain't to be in no backup role with the Browns. He's in there to start. He's going to take some time, but he's going to start, and he's going to start early this year, he declared, sending Cleveland fans into a frenzy of hope. Then came his wildest claim yet. McCoy compared Sanders' grind to none other than Tom Brady. "Don't let the jewelry, the music, the swagger fool you. He's a hard worker. First one in, last one out. That's what the head coach said. Same thing they used to say about Brady," McCoy insisted, daring anyone to underestimate Sanders' drive. "Sounds like someone else I know. His name is Brady," LeSean McCoy declared, doubling down on his comparison to his former Tampa Bay teammates' legendary work ethic. And McCoy didn't stop there. He kept riding for Sanders all summer long, even jumping to his defense during minor controversies like speeding tickets. His unwavering loyalty painted a picture of a young quarterback destined for greatness. But not everyone in the media was as blindly loyal. Enter Mark Schlereth, the 3-time Super Bowl champ who came with a sharper, more analytical edge. Using his offensive line expertise, Schlereth offered a mix of support and critique that dug into the real X's and O's of Sanders' game. Early in the pre-draft process, Schlereth had Sanders' back when anonymous coaches tried dragging his confidence through the mud. A lot of draft evaluators are stupid. Show me a quarterback who's not arrogant. Ever sit with a guy who's going to be a star quarterback? Most of them are arrogant. Most of them have a lot of belief in what they do, Schlereth argued on FS1's Breakfast Ball, flipping arrogance into a badge of honor for elite QBs. But once Sanders' shocking draft slide became reality, Schlereth delivered a more nuanced breakdown of why it happened. From a talent perspective, he's not a generational guy, so you better ace the intangibles part of the process. And by all accounts, he did not ace the intangible aspect, he explained, acknowledging the arm talent, but also stressing how pre-draft interviews and character checks can sink a prospect. Schlereth's takes got even sharper when Sanders' preseason struggles began. Drawing from his time as a Colorado radio analyst, he revealed how bad the situation was in college. During his career there, I even pulled Deion aside and said, "Dude, what you're asking guys to do is impossible," Schlereth admitted, exposing how weak that O-line really was. Still, he didn't let Sanders off the hook. He closed his critique with a blunt assessment. His pocket presence is an issue. He holds the ball too long, and that's something he's got to work on. For Schlereth, the excuses stopped at the NFL level, where flaws get exposed fast. You saw it in the Rams game, 5 sacks, and a lot of that was on him trying to force something instead of just getting rid of the ball, Mark Schlereth said, critiquing Sanders while still giving context. His analysis struck a balance between empathy and accountability, showing the tough truth. Shadow had the talent, but he also had to sharpen his decision-making if he wanted to last in the NFL spotlight. That kind of technical breakdown found an echo in another voice, Keyshawn Johnson, the former number 1 overall pick who became one of Sanders' most loyal advocates. With his own history of draft pressure and NFL scrutiny, Johnson brought a unique lens to the conversation that mixed experience with cultural critique. Johnson's defense of Sanders started early, back in November 2024, when critics came for Deion Sanders' efforts to guide his son's landing spot. Keyshawn didn't flinch. That's good. He should step in. He shouldn't surrender any, I don't want to call it power, but advice to anyone, Johnson argued, comparing Deion's strategy to Eli Manning's infamous draft day stand in 2004. To him, Coach Prime wasn't meddling, he was protecting. When the pre-draft noise got louder, Johnson fired back with a cultural breakdown that cut deep. You get these coaches that aren't used to dealing with players at this position who bring a certain snap, crackle, pop to them, he said on FS1 Speak, suggesting that Sanders' authentic personality clashed with old-school quarterback molds. In other words, Shadow wasn't being judged fairly, he was being boxed in, and Johnson didn't just defend, he predicted. The crazy thing is, I'm confident it's going to be Shedeur. I don't know if it's week 1 or 4 or 5 games in, but before the midseason mark, he's gonna be the starter, he declared in May 2025 after Sanders shined in minicamp. When Shadow torched the Panthers in his preseason debut, 14 of 23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, Keyshawn celebrated like he'd been proven right on national TV. "That's not a fluke," he exclaimed, calling it proof that Sanders was a first-round talent all along. And even when Sanders struggled in his finale against the Rams, Johnson refused to budge. He blamed the O-line breakdowns and nagging injuries, not Shadow's fundamentals. That same unwavering faith was echoed by another legend who knew firsthand the grind of being overlooked. Kurt Warner, the Hall of Fame quarterback who went from undrafted to Super Bowl champ with the Rams, brought both technical insight and hard-earned empathy into Sanders' corner. Kurt Warner's first take on Sanders was glowing. He couldn't stop talking about the young quarterback's touch and precision. Shedeur may throw the best ball, and what I mean by that is the most catchable, the most accurate ball of all these guys. I love that he can pace the ball. He never throws it hard. He never has to throw through you, Warner said during a March 2025 sit-down on the Joel Klatt Show, praising Sanders' accuracy as elite-level talent. But Warner didn't just hand out compliments. He kept it real, too. From his film study, he noticed warning signs about Sanders' pocket presence in tough situations. I watched some of his tape from the beginning of the year, and I watched the last 4 games. I felt in the last 4 games, Shedeur was very uneasy in the pocket, Warner explained, pointing to moments where Colorado's shaky offensive line left him rattled. When draft night humiliation hit and Sanders slipped to the 5th round, Warner was furious. On the Jim Rome show in May 2025, he declared, "My evaluation was he's the most accurate quarterback in this draft. I really like Shedeur. He wasn't a 5th round prospect in my opinion." To Warner, the league had botched the evaluation, plain and simple. He emphasized that Sanders was more than just numbers. He was a proven game winner at both Jackson State and Colorado, carrying his squads when everything else was falling apart. That ability, Warner argued, was being overlooked by scouts obsessed with nitpicking mechanics. And when Cleveland's preseason rotations turned messy, Warner's frustration spilled online. "I was really looking forward to the competition between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in that last preseason game. A bummer that both didn't have the same ops to make plays," he posted, blasting the Browns for creating an uneven playing field that made fair evaluation impossible. While Warner focused on technical skill and long-term development, another Hall of Famer wasn't nearly as patient. Instead of breaking down film, he came with a scathing indictment of Sanders' entire pre-draft approach, and it shocked fans across the league. Cris Carter didn't just criticize, he went for the jugular. Speaking on the Fully Loaded podcast on April 28, 2025, Carter ripped into Sanders from every angle, blasting not just his football skills, but his entire approach to the biggest moment of his career. "You're going for a job interview." And for his job interview, he was more concerned about his outfit. His necklace was over $100 grand, Carter sneered, disgust written all over his words as he painted Sanders as a young man with upside-down priorities. Carter then unleashed a cold, point-by-point breakdown of every mistake Sanders made during the draft process. Not working out at the combine, that wasn't the right thing. His interview process, he could have done a lot better. A lot of people left meetings feeling he was very, very entitled, Carter said, framing Sanders as his own worst enemy. The message was brutal. Shedeur hadn't been sabotaged by the NFL, he'd sabotaged himself. And Carter wasn't done yet. He dismissed every conspiracy theory about league collusion before dropping his harshest critique of all. "He doesn't have a big-time arm. He's not a big guy. He's not overly athletic. He doesn't have superstar qualities." In Carter's eyes, Sanders didn't just lack polish. He lacked the exceptional traits needed to justify looking past the red flags. Then came the dagger. Carter estimated that Sanders and the way his family handled the process cost him between $30 and $50 million in guaranteed money. To Carter, this wasn't just a draft slide, it was a reality check that both father and son desperately needed, and he didn't stop at football. Carter accused Sanders' entire brand of being a liability, arguing that the flashy lifestyle and media attention that boosted him in college only backfired in the NFL spotlight. His final verdict was devastating. Shedeur was a talented quarterback, but one who had let ego and image sabotage a golden opportunity. From Carter's ruthless takedown to McCoy's Brady comparisons, the NFL world is split right down the middle on Shedeur Sanders. Is he the Browns' savior in the making, or just another hyped name destined to fade? One thing's for sure, the saga of Coach Prime's son is far from over. And if you've been locked into this drama with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Shedeur is being unfairly judged, or did he bring some of this heat on himself? Let's talk about it, and I'll see you in the next one.